Welcome. My name is William Wingson, and today we'll be talking about Sage 300 Accounts Receivable Journal Entries. We'll be looking today at the transactions in AR and looking at the journal entries it creates. So I am William, and the agenda today I will talk about journal entries, why are they important, transaction flow, basic accounting, debits and credits, journal entries generated by accounts receivable, and printing the posting journals. Okay, so again, this diagram is a diagram that I show at all of my sessions with journal entries. It gives you an overall view of all the Sage 300 modules. As you can see here, the accounts receivable module sends information to the bank, right? For example, if I receive money, it will update the bank so that when I'm doing my bank reconciliation, I will see all the deposits and I can reconcile it easily in the bank. The bank looks like a sub-ledger, okay? The accounts receivable will then send information over to the general ledger, and this is what we're going to be dealing with today. What are the journal entries like? Okay, if you had order entry and you do an invoice from order entry, then it will automatically flow into accounts receivable, those invoices, and then it will send information to the general ledger once it's posted in accounts receivable. Okay, so we are going to be focusing on this today. Okay, this screen here gives us a visual view of the debits and credits for the different grouping of accounts. There's only 5 grouping of accounts, as everyone knows. There's assets, liabilities, owner's equity, revenue, and expense. Okay, so it's important if you're doing accounting. I know the accountants all know this down pat. This is accounting 101. Within the first week of your accounting class, you would have covered this. But sometimes people get into positions where they're not really accountants, but they have to do some data entry. And having an idea of how it works is sometimes very useful. So if you increase an asset, it's going to be a debit. Increase a liability, is going to be a credit. Owner's equity is going to be a credit. And for revenue, increase revenue is credit. Increase expenses is a debit. As you notice, on the left-hand side is a debit. On the right-hand side is a credit. So when I say that I'm debiting something, it means I'm putting it on the left-hand side. If I say I'm crediting the account, I'm putting it on the right-hand side. Okay, and depending on the type of account, one of the 5 types of account, if you put it on one side, you will increase it. So if I put a credit to my liability, that means I'm increasing the liability. Okay, the next screen. Again, this is the same thing, except it's in text form. And some people like it in text form. You can see on the screen that there is 5 types of accounts. There's only 5 groupings, right? And the normal balance for an asset account would be a debit balance. And if you increase, you require a debit. If you decrease, you'll do a credit. So again, this is just a text format of the previous diagram. So let's get started. Let's go and look at our Sage 300 system. Okay, so I'm going to dive into this. Okay, before we start off in the system, we need to look at setup first. So in this setup, each module, you will see something called account set. This is critical to understand the account set because this is where the accounts are coming from. When you post something, which account is it going to go to? It depends on the account set. So if I look here at the account set trade, which I'll be using today, I will see that the receivable control account 115, that is the account is going to be the receivable accounts, right? The prepayment liability account 2030, for example, right here, that account is going to be if I did a prepayment, it's going to go to that account. And if I write off something, it's going to go to account 6100. Okay? Notice that the account set is tied to a currency code. Once you save the account set with the currency code, you cannot change the currency code. Okay? And as you can see here, I will have different account sets. So there's another account set here. This is one where the currency is US. And therefore, I will have exchange gain or loss. Okay? Now, once you have set up the account set, then this account sets get tied to the customer. So when I create customers, you will see one of the selections is the accounts set. So if I click on, let's say 1400, and then go to my processing tab, I will see that for this particular customer, we're using the account set trade. Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out is under, let me just close down some of these screens here. Okay. So the other thing in setup which you want to look at is if you're using items. So AR or accounts receivable items. So accounts receivable items, when you look at them, it's a way of setting up accounts attached to an item for your inventory and cost of goods sold. So we have set up some items here already. I'm going to look at one of them. And I can see that the revenue account here, right, for this particular item is this account 4,220. The inventory account is going to be 1,300. And the corresponding cost of goods sold account is this. Now, where will it get information for the cost of goods sold? Well, if you look at the pricing tab, it's going to give you the item cost, and it's also going to give you the item price. So when I do an item invoice, and I put one item, this is going to be the revenue, 1,500, and the cost of goods sold is going to be 75. Okay, so just keep note of that. Okay, so again, just to go over two places, the account set will determine accounts, the item also will determine accounts. If you have taxes and you want to see which account it's going to, then you will have to go into Common Services Taxes to see the tax setup. So in my particular case, if I'm looking at the GST, for example, this account, so if I type in, let's say, GST tab, now I will see on the account tab, I will see it's going to go to this account here. The liability account is going to 2430, right? And if there's a recoverable tax that I receive, right, it's going to be 1150, okay? So you will have to look in this to find out which account it is going to go to, the account number. So now we have all the pieces together. The next thing we want to look at is how does this module integrate with the general ledger? So I look at the GL integration icon, I open that up, and I see here that I've set it up so that when I post something in the general, in the AR, during the posting process, it will create something in the general ledger. The next one is, okay, it's great that during posting we are creating something in the GL, but how do we want it to work in the GL? Do we want to create a new batch, right? Do we want it to add to existing batch? It's often confusing. People sometimes ask me, well, what if I select add to an existing batch and there's no open batches? Then it will create a new batch, okay? Some people say, well, we don't modify the batch in the general ledger, which is correct. You shouldn't be modifying a batch from a subledger in the GL. Okay, so why don't we just select create and posting? Well, again, this is a style issue. Some people like to just create the new batch because then they'll see the batch open and then they'll know they have to review it. If it automatically creates the batch and posts it, then they might not remember to go and review the batches. In this section here, you will also see the when you create an invoice, for example, the source code is going to be ARIN. Now, it is possible to change these, okay? So you can change them if you wish, but I found that very few people have changed it. So people normally leave it, and if they want to find out what it means, they would have the screen. But you can change the wording, for example, but it will change it for everybody, okay? So just keep that in mind. So the other thing is when you do send something over from the subledger, for example, when I send something over from the AR module, it will, in the detail reference field, it will set the customer number and the customer name. Also in the detail description field, you will see the document type and the document number. Okay, so again, this is useful for if you're working in the general ledger. So that's the setup part. Now, we want to go and do some transactions. So the first transaction I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my invoice batch list and I'm going to create a transaction. So I'm going to create a new batch so I can put a transaction in there. I am going to typically, again, what you should do is you should fill out all of this information. Okay. Some companies, they agree among the team that they would put in the number here, or sorry, some letter for the initials. So I put in my initials so that you can see who created the batch. Okay, because some people, they don't like people going and touch their batches. They want it to be only what entries they put into that particular batch. So here I would select the type of invoice. So there's two types. You can either use a summary or an item invoice batch. Okay, so I will just put put some entry inside here. I'm going to just change it to summary. Now notice when I change it, the container of the screen or this part of the screen would change. So if I do it as a summary type, oops, I have to select summary, of course. Notice how the screen changes. So I'm going to just enter some information inside here just to show you summary. And I'm going to select a customer. Again, notice that the asterisk next to it means that that is a compulsory field. Okay. Some of you may know this, but again, notice that entered by. So we can now tell who entered a particular entry. Okay. So here I'm going to select its invoice, right? Now the account set is going to be trade. You can change the account set per document, but the currency code must be the same. So right now the currency code is Canadian. I cannot change the account set to a, let's say, account set that uses a different, let's say, US currency, for example. Okay, so you've got to keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select a revenue account. I can use a distribution code. I can simply type in the account that's going to be distributed to. So let's say I'm going to put in a sales amount of $1,000 so that I can see the taxes calculating pretty easily. Tab. If I wanted to see the taxes, I can go to the taxes tab because I only have one line, right? But you keep in mind that if there were different lines where you had different types of taxes, you would then use this to change the taxes per line. Okay, so that is a feature that is useful depending on various items that some might be taxable, some might not be taxable. Okay, Now I'm going to add this. So I've created one type of invoice called the item type. Oh, sorry, that was the summary type. Now I'm going to add one for the item type. So I'm just going to type in a information here. I'm going to use the same customer again, which is going to be 1400. Oops. Tab. And in this case, I'm going to select an item. So I'm going to select just the first item. And once I tab out of that field, I will see now by default it'll put in 1. I can change this. I can change this quantity to 2. The unit price is 150, and you can see the extended cost here. So if for some reason if I wanted to, right, so I can go inside here, tab, and I will see the taxes being calculated automatically for me, 750, etc. So if I were to save this, I'm going to close out of this type of screen. Now, I am going to add this. So now I have 2 entries. So I have a summary invoice and I have an item invoice. Now I'm going to post the batch. Okay, I could post it from this screen, which was something relatively new. You can click on the post button here. Okay, again, some people think that, okay, I'm on entry number 2. Does that mean it's only posting entry number 2? Well, no, it posts the whole batch. Okay, so we are posting the whole batch here. Yes. Now, once the posting process is done, then what we can do is we can now scroll out to here. We can now, I'm going to close this down. I want to see what journal entries were created. If I don't have rights to the GL, right, I could go and look at the batch and the GL directly. But if I don't have rights, I could also print the AR posting journal. So if I go to here, I can click on, let's say, the sequence number. I scroll to my right. I will see the posting sequence number. And if you double click on the posting sequence number, another screen is going to open up, which is the printing screen for the AR posting journal. What you would notice here, however, is that the invoice is already selected, right? And also the posting sequence number is automatically defaulting to that particular sequence on the line that we selected. Okay, I am going to sort it by entry number, and I'm going to click on the print button. So you will recall that we had 2 types of invoices. In the summary invoice, I would expect the accounts receivable would increase. If my accounts receivable, which is an asset account, increases, it is going to be a debit. My sales account also increases. My sales account 4,000. If the sales increases, then that account is going to, we're going to credit that account. We're going to credit the sales account to increase it. And the taxes are liability accounts. When I increase a liability, it's going to be a credit. Okay, so I can see here the transactions. I can see here that it is quite easy to to look at the transactions. Before I leave this page, I will go to the next transaction, which is a item type invoice. Again, here you notice that the accounts receivable increase, right? The sales increased by 150. I only sold 1 item. But now it reduces my inventory account because I don't have that item anymore. My inventory is going to reduce, and the cost of goods sold is also going to, in this case, it's going to increase. So the cost of goods sold went up, and the inventory account went down. And we have the corresponding taxes as we did with the summary invoice. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the same thing, but this time I'm going to go into the general ledger. Again, as I mentioned before, let's go to the general ledger. This is provided that you have rights to do this. Okay, so went to my general ledger. I click on my batch list icon. It opens up. I see here I have a batch. Again, notice that if I were to open this, okay, notice here I have, is this the right one? Let's just check to see the number of entries we have here. Okay, now this is not the right one because I had 2 entries in there. Let me just, I hope I didn't play around with my setup, and let me see what I have for GL integration. I hope I didn't change it. I hope it says create a new batch. Yes, so it's create a new batch during posting. This is exactly what I want. And I'm going to go back into my GL transaction list. I go to my batch list, and I am going to scroll down because it might be down here. So I'm going to go down to the last one here. Okay. 243 in AR. Okay. And this is a summary invoice. And the next one should be the item type invoice. Okay. So again, so you see why I have here the entry. I have the description coming in here. Notice in the reference field, I see the customer because I selected the customer number, the customer name to put it in the reference field. In the description, I have the type. It's an invoice and the invoice number. And then way down in the in this table here, it says what its invoice and the batch number it's coming from. So that's the batch number it came from. Okay, we are in batch number 243, but this is the batch number it came from. So it's pretty easy to see the batch it came from in here. The other thing that you can do is you can also drill back down. So I can go inside here. I'm in the GL journal entry, and if I click on the drill down button, then it will go back and open up the AR invoice entry screen. I will see that particular entry. So again, this is tying the general ledger to the sub ledger. Now, again, some people have asked for the ability to bring up a batch number. Okay, so I posted a batch number in AR. What batch did it go to in the general ledger? So there is no report that C300 prints right now. However, you can customize an existing report because in the posting table, it has what batch number it went to. So you can either customize a crystal report or use a, let's say, something like the intelligence report to create a report that will give you this batch in AP went to this batch in the general ledger. Okay, so it's possible to do that. Okay. So we did 2 types of invoices in the AR Accounts Receivable module. Now let us go and do a credit note, for example. So with a credit note, you would expect that the Accounts Receivable account would be reduced. And I'm going to do the same type of thing. I'm going to do a credit note by a summary type, and I'm going to do an invoice. Sorry, I'm going to do an item credit note. Okay. So, and again, what would you expect? So you would expect that the item, the inventory would increase, because if you do a credit note, you'd assume you're bringing back in the item. So let's go into invoice batch list. It's already open, so I just select this. I think I posted my last batch. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new batch again. And again, typically you would fill this out, but for the sake of moving on, I will just select the item summary type, and I'm going to select the customer is going to be 1400. And notice here, let's say I put in, I don't have to type in anything like negative or anything like that. I just type in, let's say, tab 100, and oh, sorry, I have to put in an account number here. So I'm going to type in account number 4000, and the amount is going to be 100. Tab. Okay. If I look at my taxes tab, taxes will calculate automatically. Okay. You can also uncheck this and manually type in the taxes if you wish. Okay. So if I go back to my document tab, I would see that I have oops, I am doing the wrong thing. I said I was going to do a credit note, didn't I? So I will go back inside and ensure that this is a credit note. And I now have to go back and do that again. So I'll just type in here, 4,000 again, and tab, I'm going to put in the amount. It's going to be 100. Everything is going to be the same tab. If you notice when I hit add, you notice this is going to be negative. So I'm going to click on add, and it's negative. Okay. I'm going to do another entry, but this time I'm going to do an item entry. I'm going to again select the customer. I'm going to select the item, which is the first one here. So I'm going to do, let's use the finder to find it. All right, tab. So the quantity returned, let's say, is 1. Again, the unit price. So again, oops, I keep doing this. I keep forgetting to make it a credit note. Okay, so it's a credit note. So again, I have to go back, select the first item. Okay, now if I click add, again, the taxes will automatically calculate. So if I go back 1, I will see here that I have the item. Again, notice that I can see who entered the item, or who entered this credit note, etc. So now what I'm going to do is I have saved this. I am going to post this batch. Okay, so I click on the post button, ready to post, set to yes. So now if I go and look at the journal entry, how would I do that? Again, if I were to do it quickly in my particular case, again, this is my style. Instead of going to transaction reports, I can simply scroll to my right here, select the posting sequence number, double click on it, and automatically bring up the screen. And I'm going to sort it by, let's say, the bank, and then hit print. So what we'll expect to see is my accounts receivable is going to get smaller because, right, it's a credit note. And the sales amount is also going to decrease. This is the summary type credit note, right? Now if I look at the item type credit note, I would see my inventory went back up. My cost of goods sold was reduced. My taxes, I'm not owing as much taxes, etc. So the journal entry is right there in this report. If you have rights to the GL, of course you can go into the GL batch and see the exact same thing. Okay. So again, that's just 2 types of entries. We did the credit note, so there are different types you can do. You can do a debit note. We can do an interest invoice. Okay. So if I had to do an invoice, I could do it manually, or I could create interest invoice on a large scale in periodic processing. So if I were to create it individually, if I click on this, let's say for 1400, the type of invoice is going to be, let's change this to summary type, and you'll notice that here I can say it's an interest invoice. Okay, the document number will be for interest invoice. I think it's IT, and then the number. And let's go and select the account. Let's see. I think there is some account with, let's say it starts with a 4. And I'm looking at interest, not discount, but maybe interest revenue, maybe. Is there interest revenue somewhere? Miscellaneous income. Interest income, let's do that. Yep. And let's say it was $50. Oops. And I click on add. Okay. So now, when I go back to my, and obviously I can post it very quickly. So if increase. Okay. So this is a simple way, again, of looking at your journal entries. The alternative, which is a lot, a little more work, you can go into the transaction report, you can go to the posting journal, select the different types you have, and then the corresponding or the posting sequence that you want to see, and you'll get the same type of information that you would get from the batch screen. Again, it's the same report, except I think it's more efficient printing it from the batch screen. Now, of course, why didn't I get something? Because I have to hit reprint. So print posting journal, and then I would see it. So sometimes you don't forget that if you printed it already and you're reprinting it, so select the reprint option also. Okay. So now we move on. We are going to look at, let's say, let's do something like another type of transaction. Let's say a receipt. We're going to receive money. So I'm going to create a new batch. I am going to do the basic type as a receipt. I'm going to select 1400. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do different document types in transaction types. So the first one is going to be a receipt. Okay. So I am going to, let's say, do this credit, this note here for 1,800. So if I select yes, right, and then I notice here I should have a receipt amount of $1,008 tab. Okay, so there's no unapplied amount. So what do we expect to see here as a journal entry? Well, I'm getting money, so that means my bank account for this bank account will increase. So therefore it will be a debit to that bank account. And my receivable is going to go down. So I'm going to credit the receivable account. So I will see that when I post my receipt. Okay, I'm going to add this, and then I'm going to do another type of transaction. So in this particular case, I'm going to do a prepayment. So a prepayment or a deposit, the customer has given us money. So for work to be done, right? So I can say, let's say it's the same customer, 1400. Tab, I know the check number if it's a check. And let's say the amount is going to be, let's say $500. Tab. Okay, now sometimes you might have a PO number you might have an invoice number. So if you do have a PO number, you can actually go to this, select the PO number for the customer, and then type in the number. When you are doing the invoice, if you type in the exact PO number, it will then, when you post the invoice batch, it will automatically get posted and it will match up with this receipt. Okay, so that is something, again, you can do. So I'm just going to add that entry in. So that's the second type. I can also do another one, let's say for, I can do something called unapplied cash, right? This is, I have cash that's left over, or I don't know where to apply it to at the moment, so I can select unapplied cash. I can also do something called apply document. This will allow me to match up. Again, we will not create any receipt, any money coming in. It will not affect the bank. What it's going to do is it's going to apply either a credit note, either a prepayment or unapplied cash amount, any one of these. Notice inside the screen you wouldn't see any invoice entries. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm a receipt batch, right? I'm going to apply this $112 to a particular invoice. So let's do F7. So I just hit F7 instead of clicking on the go button. So F7 allows you to fill out that screen quickly. And let's apply that to, let's say, this invoice here. So I'm just matching it up, and I'm going to add this. Okay, so I've done 3 different types. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post it at this point. So I'm just going to go to my, go back one, or I can post it the way a lot of people have been using it before. So I just close out the screen because I might have to print it depending on the setting. I can select the this and print, click on post. In my case, I don't have to print. I'm going to say yes, I don't have to print the batch listing. So now what I have is posted those 3 types of receipts. So if I wanted to see the journal entry, I again scroll to my right, select the posting sequence number, double click on it, and then if this is my case, I'm going to sort it by entry number. When this opens up, okay, I will see here in my report, if I scroll to the side here, I will say I have 3 different types of entry. The first one is going to be the receipt type. Again, what we expect here is the bank to increase and the accounts receivable will be decreased. In the next case, we have a deposit. So the deposit will have, the bank will increase, of course, but then we have a prepayment liability. So again, I pointed out to you, why is it going to this particular account, the 2030? Because as I mentioned for the account set, so if I were to minimize this for a second, if I go into my AR setup, if I go to the account set and select trade tab, you notice here that the prepayment liability is 2030. So that's where it's getting that account from. It's because for this particular customer, 1400, he's using that account set trade, which has the liability when I do a prepayment or a deposit from that customer. Okay, so that's why it's getting that account. Okay, and now the last one is going to be simply, it's going to reduce the receivable in one and increase it. So my credit note 1200 was applied to this. So the accounts receivable for this invoice here is going down, and for this one here, because it was a credit note, I'm balancing it off. So I'm using the credit note and applying it to that particular invoice. Okay, so I've done a receipt. So you can see the pattern. If I want to look at my journal entries, I create the batch, I post the batch, and then I print my posting journal. So this is the cycle. And we can do this for other things. For example, we can do it for, let's say we had to do let's do a refund, okay? So if I had to do a refund, I would go to my refund entry screen. I could go to the batch list. I could create a new batch, right? If I pick the same customer, let's say customer 1400, and let's say this customer wanted a, let's say I'm going to give them back a check, so I'll need to print a check, right? And when I look at the documents here, what I will see here is I will see only either credit notes, prepayments, or unapplied cash. So if they had accidentally given me more money than than they should have, it would be unapplied cash. But if there's a credit note, I could also use that credit note to pay them back, because they say, okay, we don't want the credit note, give me back the money. So here I can determine how much of the money I want to give them back. So do I want to give them back the full 168, or do I want to give them part of it? There might be a restocking fee or whatever it is. Okay. So again, here if I add this, I'm going to go back just so I can post it at this level and click on the post button, right? This looks very much like the AP when we're printing AP checks. However, it's not. Make sure that the check form here says AR. And now I'm going to click on my print button. It will generate a check, which, again, you give it to your customer. Okay, and now it says ready to post, yes. So the posting process is done. Okay, and now if I close down this screen and then move to my left here, I want to look at the posting sequence number 4. I click on the print button. And again, I will see the journal entries. So I have just done a check to a customer, so I expect my bank account to go down. So I credit 168, and my receivable, right, the credit note that I had before is going to get cleared out. So I am taking this against the credit note. So then it will cancel out. So again, you see how to look at the journal entries. You can trace what account it's going to. You are comfortable that the journal entry is correct. If you are comfortable that the journal entry is correct, then you'll be comfortable that your financial statement will be accurate, right? You would know which accounts it's going to. So the reason why journal entries are so important is because we want to have confidence in our system that when we do a transaction, it gets posted to the right account. If we are comfortable with that, then the process works a lot faster and we are confident in our financial statement. Okay. So at this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the floor for any questions. Okay. There is a question about, I see here, about adjustment. Yes, you can do adjustments. The only thing that I have to caution people about adjustment is if you are doing an adjustment that affects a bank account, right, it does not flow to the bank. You would have to go and do a separate entry in the bank account. Okay. Any other questions? There's a question coming in about the drill downs. In order to have drill downs from the general ledger to the subledger module, then you have to do not consolidate, right? If you consolidate, you won't be able to drill down. And the drill down function, if you go into your general ledger, for example, I think my batch is already open. Here, if I look at my AR, so I can tell right off the bat certain things just by looking at the particular entry. This was an interest batch. So if I click on, let's say, this is the AR, oh, I'm in AR, I have to be in GL. So let me just go back into my general ledger, which is GL transaction, the batch list. Let's look at this last one here. I'm going to open it up. Once it opens, I am going to, yes, I'm going to open it up anyway. And here, if I click on this drill down here, I notice there's a refund. So I can tell it's a refund. I'm going to click on this, drill down. It's going to open the AR refund entry screen. So I see the actual entry here. Okay. I can't modify because it's posted in AR, but I can see it. Okay. So let me just go back to my, minimize this screen here so I can go back to my PowerPoint. So today what we wanted to look at journal entries and how they, when we create a transaction in AR, what are the journal entries? And we found out that journal entries are important because confidence in accurate journal entries mean that our financial statements would be accurate. It's going to the right accounts. Okay, we had a few questions which I answered. I just wanted to point out to you that the videos are available. Okay, so let's let me make this full view so that you can have a better view of it. Here we go. So these videos are recorded. Okay, and again, if you have any suggestions as to topics that you want, please contact me or send it to training@karonbusiness.com. So have a good day, and I'll see you at the next Wednesday for William, or Wednesdays with William, I should say. Talk to you later. Bye.